Survival or surrender? What would you choose? Or, better question, what are you currently allowing yourself to believe that you can choose? Because survival is its own belief system. Like, when I get to this place, when I get this thing, I'm going to be all right. It's going to be okay. And then the way that we relate to our capacity to change those belief systems is also its own belief system. So if I ask you now, survival or surrender, you'd probably go, surrender feels like a bit of a nicer experience. I'd probably choose that. But there's probably still a lot of survival in you. What are you currently willing to choose right now in opposition to survival? You can continue to choose survival. And survival's not always a bad thing. You know, we need to make choices in relation to acquiring certain things, right? We do need to survive, right? But the loop, the cyclical loop that we can find ourselves in relation to survival is kind of this precedent-setting condition, right? Where we say, okay, I'm going to get to this point in the future. I'm going to get this thing. I'm going to get the money. I'm going to get the car. Maybe not the car. Maybe I'm going to get the rent paid. I'm going to get the food. Whatever the basic survival component is, then it's going to be okay. But the thing is, when we think in this way, when we get to that point in the future, we get the thing, we're like, great, there's relief, but it sets the precedent of, right, this worked, so let's just do this again. Let's just like pine and reach, overreaching, really, realistically, let's just reach for this thing, and the harder we reach, the quicker we get it, and the quicker we get it, the quicker we get relief. That's survival, essentially. That's the loop we all play out to varying degrees. But it doesn't need to be that way. Because the greatest security that we can find is in the present moment. The present moment is always here for us. You know, it's a bit of a cliche, blah, 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 you know, present moment, but hear me out. I've got a new twist on it. When we pull our attention from these projections into these future moments through anxious attachment, and we allow ourselves to pilgrimage back to the present moment, returning our presence here, returning our consciousness here, it creates a rootsiness, right? If you think about a tree, I was thinking about this metaphor before, and I think it really works for like a present moment analogy. If you have a tree is supported by its root system, right? It draws up the moisture and the nutrients from the soil. And from those roots rises up a trunk. And from that trunk sprouts branches and leaves. And if it's a fruit tree, you get the fruit. But that fruit, that sweet fruit that we all love the taste of, it can only result from a strong rooting system. Because the quality of the sugar content and the quality of the water, maybe not the quality, but the quantity of the water that the fruit absorbs in order to grow big and plump and nice and juicy, it relies on a really strong, robust root system. Now, if you take that analogy and then transpose it to what we're talking about here, you take the rooting system as the present moment, right? We talk about groundedness, we talk about centeredness. Well, if we take the present moment as the root, and then we continue to draw ourselves back to the root, like anchor back into the root, literally ground ourselves into the present moment, then we create a strong trunk, we get the branches, and then we can create gorgeous fruit, tasty fruit, to offer to ourselves and other people. How amazing! But in order to do that, it requires surrender. Like, we need to surrender to being held by our own rooting system, which is the present moment. Right? We can be held by the present moment. And I've noticed this with myself, like there's such a great fear of letting go. There's such a great fear of like not reaching for the thing, like not being in a constant mode of striving and reaching and attaining and initiating and like acquiring. That if we stop this, if we stop doing that thing, then everything's going to fall apart, we're going to die, we're going to wither, everything's going to implode. But that's the survival conditioning kicking back against the greater will towards surrender. Or, well, yeah, there is a will in surrender. It is, that's what it is. It's the kickback, it's the blowback of the program of survival, which is the conditioning just going, no, 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 we need to survive, we need to survive, we need to survive. But in reality, living that way, it's actually anti-survival. And I found that myself in my own journey. I had an experience over Christmas where I was overreaching in a really big way in a lot of areas of my life. And my body just wiped me out. And I was really feeling a lot of stress. And I had some really difficult panic episodes, some really difficult dysregulation episodes, some of the most challenging I've ever had. So that constant striving, which is holding ourselves in tension and being in a constant state of fight or flight in that sympathetic activation of the nervous system, excuse me, itchy nose, eventually it is going to take its toll. And when it takes its toll, like when the effect of stress compounds to a point at which the system can no longer hold it in an expression of executive function, and just general bodily function, it's believe me, it's not a nice experience. And so the question is again, what would you rather have? Survival or surrender? What would you rather live in? Survival or surrender? Surrender's the easiest choice. But in another expression, it is also the more difficult choice. It's difficult to let go. It's difficult to heal. It's difficult to look back at our family lines and recognize, oh yeah, there's some ancestral stuff there. I need to deal with that. I find that myself. It's part of my conditioning. Like this whole survival piece for me is on my mother's line. And with the greatest of love for my family, no family's perfect. And we all inherit some kind of generational debt, which we need to work through and release and resolve. It can stop with us right here, right now. It's a choice. It's always a choice away. And so, what's it going to be? Is it going to be survival or is it going to be surrender? Today, I chose surrender. And tomorrow, I'm going to choose surrender again. And the next day, I'm going to choose surrender. Because I've found, personally, the more I've chose surrender, the more enjoyable my life's been. It's not actually been to a detriment. Things have still happened. I've still initiated. I've not been in this passive mode of limbo, of not doing anything. I've actually created more of an expansiveness in my field, in my life, where I can actually pull out insights and inspirations and creativity and be a better artist, be a better writer, be a better person in general, And that came from the pilgrimage back to my present moment, like really surrendering to my roots and branching system that's holding me here, solid, real, now. Is it survival or is it surrender? It's your choice. It's always a choice away. It's always a choice away. What's your choice going to be?